The rain fell heavier now, drumming on the zinc roofs of nearby houses. The whole village seemed to be asleep, except for the lone figure standing in front of Ada Aura. She could barely see through the misty darkness, but the faint glow of a nearby lantern caught the outline of a tall man in a long raincoat. Raindrops streamed down his face, but his eyes. Oh, his eyes. They were fixed on her, not with disgust like the villagers, not with pity like the few who sometimes fed her, but with something deeper. Something searching. Something that made her chest ache. Ada Aura's fingers tightened around the blanket. Her lips trembled. Who are you? She whispered, her voice barely louder than the rain. The man didn't answer. He knelt in front of her, his large frame blocking the wind. Slowly, carefully, he tucked the blanket tighter around her shoulders like a mother would wrap her baby. You should not be sleeping in the cold, he said finally, his voice low, warm, and firm. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A truth. A rebuke, but gentle. Ada Aura's throat closed. She wanted to explain. She wanted to tell him about her auntie, the lies, the shame, the hunger. But her words caught in her chest and turned into a sob. I have nowhere else to go, she managed to say. Nowhere. He was quiet for a long moment. The rain fell between them, the only sound filling the silence. Then he reached into the deep pocket of his coat and brought out something small, a folded nylon bag. He placed it gently in her lap. She opened it with trembling fingers and found a fat bundle of roasted plantains, still steaming hot. Her stomach growled painfully. But she didn't touch it yet. She just stared at him, water mixing with the tears on her cheeks. The man studied her face for a moment, then slowly stood up. His shadow loomed tall against the mansion gate. You will not always be here, he said quietly, as if he were making a vow. One day, you will walk through this gate. Not to sweep. Not to beg. But to live. Ada Aura's breath caught. She wanted to ask why. She wanted to ask how. But before she could speak, he stepped back, melting into the darkness beyond the rain. Wait. Her voice broke as she scrambled to her feet. But when she looked down the road, there was no one there. No footsteps in the puddles. No trace at all. Only the blanket, the warm plantains, and a strange, trembling hope in her chest. The very next morning, as the mist still hung low over the village, Ngozi stormed back to the gate, her slippers slapping against the wet earth. She caught sight of Ada Aura huddled under the blanket, eating the last piece of plantain. Ehen. So this is what you are doing now, she sneered. Sleeping with men in front of people's houses to get food. Shameless. God will punish you. Auntie, it's not, Ada Aura began, but Ngozi raised her hand threateningly. Don't open that mouth, Ada Aura. You are cursed. Everywhere you go, bad luck follows. And whoever is feeding you, they will regret it. You hear me? They will regret it. Her voice rang down the road, sharp enough to draw a few curious heads from doorways. But Ada Aura didn't reply. She just stared down at her empty food flask, her mind replaying the man's words from the night before. One day, you will walk through this gate. Not to sweep. Not to beg. But to live. Days passed. Ada Aura continued sleeping by the gate. Every night, the blanket and food would appear, but the mysterious man never came again. Then one night, the moon rose strange and swollen in the sky, its color deep red. The villagers whispered that such a moon was a sign of change, either for great blessing or great tragedy. That night, the food didn't appear at the usual time. Ada Aura waited, her stomach knotted, fear nibbling at her mind. She pulled the blanket tighter and tried to sleep. Hours later, she woke to a soft sound, footsteps again. But this time, they were different. Faster. Urgent. She looked up and froze. It was him. The man. His raincoat gone, his face clearer in the moonlight, and his expression was troubled, almost desperate. He knelt before her again, but this time, he didn't bring food. Instead, he took her trembling hands in his. Ada Aura, he said, her name rolling off his tongue like he had known it forever. Something is coming. You must be strong. Do not leave this gate, no matter what happens. Promise me. Her lips trembled. I don't understand. You will, he whispered. Very soon. And before she could say a word, he rose, glanced toward the village square as if sensing danger, and vanished into the shadows once more. Ada Aurora sat there under the red moon, her heart pounding against her ribs. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know why he cared. She didn't know what was coming. But in her bones, she felt it, something was about to happen that would change her life forever. And she had no idea if it would save her, or destroy her. Days turned into weeks. Weeks slipped into months. The red moon that had bathed the village in its eerie glow was now a distant memory, but Ada Aurora could still hear his voice in her dreams. Do not leave this gate, no matter what happens. She clung to those words like a starving child clings to a crust of bread. But the man did not return. Every morning she would wake, shivering under the now tattered blanket, glancing hopefully toward the mansion's compound. But the space where her food flask used to be was always empty. Her stomach grew heavier, her legs more swollen, her back screaming in pain. Her pregnancy, forced upon her through her auntie's wickedness, was now in full bloom. The weight was not just in her belly, it was on her heart. And with each passing day, the silence at the gate felt heavier, colder, lonelier. The village road that wound past the mansion was a daily theater of shame for Ada Aurora. Children pointed at her belly and laughed. Some women would pull their children closer and mutter loudly as they passed. See her, she's a disgrace. Her mother must be turning in her grave. She sleeps with men for food, now see her condition. It was easier for them to believe lies than to face the cruelty of her reality. Still, every morning, she gathered what little strength she had and walked into the village to beg for food. Sometimes she went as far as the market, her swollen feet dragging through the dust. No matter where she went, market, farms, church courtyard, her auntie, Ngozi, was there. Like a shadow that carried poison. Sometimes she would appear suddenly, grabbing Ada Aurora's arm hard enough to leave marks. Other times she would shout across the road. Don't give her food. She's cursed. She's a harlot. Her own mother warned me about her before she died. And the worst part? Some believed her. Even those who pitied Ada Aurora were too afraid to help her openly, fearing Ngozi's tongue and her spite. Once, in the market square, Ada Aurora had been kneeling before a yam seller, begging for the smallest piece. The woman, her eyes soft with pity, was about to drop a yam into Ada Aurora's hands when Ngozi came charging in. She slapped the yam away, her voice slicing through the air. You will not feed this useless girl while I am alive. She is the shame of our family. Let her die of hunger. Ada Aurora had fled, her tears blinding her, her body trembling. By the third month of this waiting, Ada Aurora's body was a map of suffering. Her cheeks were hollow, her arms thin despite the massive swell of her belly. The hunger was constant, a cruel companion that gnawed at her insides. She often dreamed of her mother, her soft voice, her gentle hands. She would wake from these dreams with tears on her face, whispering into the dawn, "Mama, where are you? Why did you leave me with her?" But the only answer was the rustle of leaves in the wind. At night, the village grew quiet, but the gate became a stage for her private battles. The security light above the mansion gate flickered, sometimes buzzing with the wings of trapped insects. She would lie curled under the blanket, pressing her hands to her belly as the baby kicked restlessly. Some nights, she could swear someone was watching her from one of the upstairs windows. A shadow, barely visible. But whenever she blinked, it would be gone. The gateman, Okafor, and the housekeeper, Memarifima, often passed by her spot quietly, carrying out their duties. Sometimes they left a cup of water near her head without saying a word. But their kindness was laced with helplessness. They were staff, they could not go against their ogre's orders, nor involve themselves in family matters they did not fully understand. One night, after a long day of begging and insults, Ada Aurora returned to the gate to find the blanket gone. She sank to her knees, staring at the cold concrete. Her mind raced with fear. Had someone taken it? Had they decided they didn't want her here anymore? Her body shook with sobs. She pressed her face into her palms and cried until she felt she might dissolve into the earth itself. That was when the first pain gripped her. A sharp, burning twist low in her belly. She gasped, clutching her stomach. Another wave hit, stronger, forcing a cry from her lips. Her breath came fast. The night air turned heavy. She knew. It was time. The contractions tore through her body like lightning. Her screams cut into the quiet night. She banged on the gate with both fists. Help! Please! Somebody help me! The gate man appeared, eyes wide with alarm. Chai! Ada Aura, you are in labor? Please open the gate, she begged, her voice breaking. He shifted on his feet, looking toward the mansion. I can't. Olga is not around. I don't have the key for the main door. Mima Ifema came running, her wrapper tied hastily, fear etched on her face. Jisoo. Okafor, what do we do? She will die here, oh. They hovered helplessly as Ada Aura collapsed to her knees, groaning in pains. She leaned against the cold iron bars of the gate, tears streaming down her face. Mama, help me, she sobbed into the night. Please, I can't do this alone. Another wave of pain tore through her, stealing her breath. Her cries grew weaker, mingled with whispered prayers. Her voice cracked as she pleaded with heaven. It was then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow, steady. The kind that belonged to someone who was not afraid of the night. She looked up through her tears and saw him. The man. The one from the red moon. The one who had vanished. Except now, she could see him clearly. His eyes locked on hers, and something passed between them, recognition. But deeper. As if he had been carrying her pain with him all along. Without a word, he crouched, scooping her into his arms as though she weighed nothing. Her head fell against his chest, the world spinning. Through the haze of pain, she heard him murmur, I told you not to leave the gate, because I would come for you. And that was the moment she knew this man was the owner of the mansion. The gate swung open without a sound. The man carried her inside, past gardens she had only ever swept, past fountains she had never touched. The lights of the mansion spilled over her face. But her eyes were closing, her strength fading. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was his face, leaning close, whispering, You are safe now. And suddenly, she woke up and gasped. It was clear to her it was a dream sequence when she thought it was really labor. She felt the same pain and began to scream, everything became real to her. She sat with her head bent and tears streamed down, begging God to either send her a helper or take her life. She muttered tearfully, little did she know that something similar to that, the same thing will come back to her in reality. The Harmattan winds had returned to the village, and with them came a crueler kind of hunger. The air was cold and dry, and the dust rose with every footstep, coating Ada Aura's cracked lips and parched throat. She had not eaten a proper meal in 2 days. The small roasted corn a stranger had given her at the market yesterday had long vanished from her belly, leaving behind an emptiness that felt like it was eating her from the inside. The pregnancy made everything harder. Her feet were swollen and sore, her legs ached constantly, and every time she bent to pick something from the ground, she felt the weight of her belly press against her lungs. She shuffled through the village square with slow, dragging steps, her eyes scanning faces, searching for pity. Sometimes pity came in the form of a woman quickly dropping a slice of yam into her hands. Sometimes it came as a hurried whisper, Take this bread, but hide it before Ngozi sees you. Other times it didn't come at all. It was in moments like this that her auntie seemed to appear from nowhere. Ngozi's voice cut through the air like a whip. Useless girl. Wretched thing. You think you can use your pregnancy to gather sympathy? You will die with that belly before anyone helps you. She would grab Ada Aura's arm and twist it painfully, dragging her a few steps before shoving her away. Sometimes she would spit on the ground in disgust. The worst was when she would curse her openly. I hope your mother is seeing you now from the grave. See the shame you have brought upon her name. You are the kind of child who kills her own parents with disgrace. The villagers would watch in silence. Some were too afraid to interfere. Some believed Ngozi's lies. A few would later slip a little food to Ada Aura in secret, but even that was dangerous. Ngozi had a way of finding out. The mansion gate had become more than just a place to sleep, it was her last shred of hope. Even when her body screamed for rest, even when her belly felt like it might burst from carrying so much weight, she forced herself to return to the gate every evening. The man's words lived in her head, "Do not leave this gate, no matter what happens." And yet, each night, the cold concrete beneath her body seemed to whisper back, "He's not coming." The blanket he had once left for her was now thin, the fabric frayed at the edges. She would curl beneath it, knees drawn close, cradling her belly, rocking herself softly as if she could comfort the child inside. The gate man, Okafor, often walked past without speaking, though his eyes betrayed pity. The housekeeper, Mama Efima, sometimes paused, glancing around before quickly leaving a plastic cup of water near her spot. These little gestures kept Adeora's hope alive. But they couldn't stop the loneliness that gnawed at her heart. By the 7th month, the pregnancy was unbearable. The baby shifted constantly, pressing against her ribs until she could hardly breathe. Her ankles were so swollen they looked like they belonged to someone else. Sometimes her vision blurred, and she would have to sit by the roadside until the dizziness passed. She often prayed quietly under her breath, "God, please, don't let me die before I see this child." But fear crept into her prayers. Fear that she might die giving birth. Fear that the child would die too. Fear that nobody would even notice if it happened. One afternoon, she dared to go to the market, hoping to find a kind soul who might spare her a little food. She spotted Mama Chica, a fish seller she knew from childhood. Her face lit with relief. Surely, Mama Chica would help her. But as she approached, her auntie appeared from behind the fish table, her face a mask of fury. "You again? Following me everywhere like a curse?" Ngozi shouted. Before Adeora could speak, Ngozi picked up a handful of fish guts from the cleaning table and flung it at her. The slimy mess hit her chest and slid down her wrapper. The market women gasped. "Go and wash yourself, shameless one," Ngozi spat. "This is the only thing you deserve." Adeora's cheeks burned with shame. She turned and walked away quickly, head bowed, tears blurring her vision. That night was colder than any other. She lay under the blanket, shivering violently. Her teeth chattered. Her stomach ached in a new way, deeper, sharper. At first she thought it was the usual discomfort of pregnancy. But when the second wave of pain came, she gasped, clutching her belly. She tried to sit up, but the pain gripped her again, stronger this time. She cried out softly, her voice trembling. She shifted, pressing her back against the gate, breathing hard. The pains began to come faster, sharper. And then she knew. "It's happening." She crawled forward and banged on the gate with her fists. "Help! Please! Somebody help me!" Her voice echoed through the quiet night. The gate man appeared, his eyes widening when he saw her clutching her belly. "Adeora, is it time? Please, please, open the gate," she panted. "I can't. I don't have the keys." Okafor cried, looking helplessly toward the house. Mima Efima arrived moments later, panic on her face. She knelt beside Adeora, holding her shoulders. "Neen, breathe, but we can't take you in." Oga gave strict orders about strangers entering without permission. Another contraction tore through her, and she screamed, gripping Mama Efima's arm. Her head dropped back against the gate. Her eyes filled with tears. Mama, help me. I'm scared." She sobbed, her voice breaking between cries of pain. Her body shook violently as she pleaded with the air. "Please, don't let me die here. Don't let my baby die." Her cries seemed to vanish into the night. And then, footsteps. From the darkness of the road beyond, a figure emerged. Tall, steady, unhurried. Her blurred eyes tried to focus. And then she saw him. The man from the red moon night. The one who had left the blanket. The one who had told her to wait. He walked straight to her, his gaze locked on hers. There was no hesitation, no surprise, as if he had been expecting this moment all along. Without a word, he bent and lifted her into his arms. Her head fell against his chest, her body trembling from pain and shock. Through the haze of agony, she heard him murmur, "I told you not to leave the gate, because I would come for you." And then she knew. This man was the owner of the mansion. The gate swung open. The air inside the compound felt different, warm, scented with flowers she had only ever smelled from outside. Her eyes fluttered, but she caught glimpses. The fountain. The paved driveway. The glowing lights of the grand house. She wanted to speak, to ask why he had helped her, but the pain stole her words. As he carried her toward the mansion doors, his voice was the last thing she heard before the darkness claimed her. You are safe now. She opened her eyes slightly while grunting painfully. Please tell me I'm not dreaming again. I'm in dreaming again. I had this similar dream, exactly this type 2 months ago. I hope it's real this time. Ada Aura said tearfully while groaning in labor pain, crying and calling for help. The man didn't say a word but smiled, yet, feel her pain as if he wanted to cry with her. Don't worry, you are safe now, he said while straining her hairs.